want to look at adding that. But we talked about, the current ordinance says 24 hours. So we're thinking, 24 hours makes sense necessarily in a public place, but maybe not when you're parked in front of your house. So rather than having to move a vehicle every 24 hours in front of your house, to look at 7 days. And then the other thing we did was we looked at a few of these street names, which needed to be corrected. So we worked on making corrections to a few of those. And so then if we go over to the memo, from Chief Boyce, and you look at what his recommendations are, and I'm happy to let him come up and explain those in a little more detail. But we're happy to take, whatever recommendations tonight, go put them into a draft ordinance, and then bring the ordinance back for first and second reading. So tonight, we're just looking for direction and discussion, no actual action on the changes.
So the changes that you guys spoke about, it addresses the 24 hours.
Yes.
Does it also address the can't have it in your street for sale and extended amount?
That would remain. We did not
Okay.
recommend any changes to that. You still would not be able to, wash a vehicle sitting in front of your house, or try to sell it, or work on a vehicle in front of your house. This was strictly about the parking piece.
So what was the time period? So if you have a working vehicle, you park in the street.
We talked about 7 days, if it hasn't moved at all.
Same spot.
So, but that doesn't include non-registered vehicles or vehicles that have been.
No, that does not include that.
No, sir. Right. And that's kind of what, a little more descriptive than what the description of a junk vehicle is. If it's wrecked, dismantled, partially dismantled, inoperable, and has remained inoperable for more than 72 consecutive hours if the vehicle is on public property, or 30 days if the vehicle is on private property.
And that needs to be on that ordinance, for sure. Yeah.
Right, and that was the one thing that Mayor Pro Tem and I discussed, was adding the junk vehicle definition, because we have a separate ordinance on junk vehicles, but that's really not defined in this particular ordinance. So we think we need to add that, because if a person reads that and they see unused or inoperable, we all have our own definition of that. So we stick with the junk vehicle as we like.
Also, that they need to be parked in accordance to the traffic code.
Yes.
Just be parked.
But we have that,
Is that addressed in a different ordinance? Chief?
It's a different ordinance.
Parking the correct direction.
You know?
Yeah,
That's
that is
in
in,
traffic.
it's in a separate state.
it is.
Okay.
And see,
Yeah,
that was,
but it won't hurt to put it in.
Add that in there.
and that was the thing too, before the ordinance committee got derailed, we were going through those different pieces of it, because that was one of the contention point, was the fact that there's several ordinances that go together, but they're in different places.
Yeah.
And
And
the
I-
whole reference, this one, you have to go to somewhere else, and then it was amended, and then you had to go look for the amendment, so.
It really should be inclusive. This one ordinance should address parking, everything that goes with it, the same traffic direction of traffic, how many days you can sit there, and if you have one inclusive ordinance, that way you don't have to fish around and look different places you can find, and it's all germane to itself.
Madam Mayor, I'd
Yes,
like to say a word here.
yes, sir.
I've got a car sitting on the car that has been sitting there for over a year. The car has been sitting in the same spot. I might say he's moved it an inch here and then an inch back. So he's moved the car. And what y'all are saying, it's optional, he can move it. But it's still a junk car. And he's let it sit there all this time, and our police department, our code compliance department, has never done anything about it. The whole that young front yard of his house is the same way. So if we're gonna start picking into stuff, we better start putting some teeth in it and explain what we're gonna do, and let's get it done.
Yes, sir.
I would say one thing, if it addressed ugly cars, that car would certainly fit into it, it is, but it won't. But we gotta get that ordinance going first.
All right, so that addresses the whole reason you brought it up. though.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, so what about the no parking on the different streets? I know that there was, one time there was talk about not parking, I think you brought it up, about not parking in front of Prior Smith Park, and that possibly any street where the houses didn't face that street.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's something if anyone wants to entertain as well. I'm just saying, since this is the parking, if that's something that you don't want to address, because I believe that we didn't act on it then because there was more just in the event that this came up instead of piecemealing it again.
Has it been a problem in the past?
It's pretty narrow. When you do, at that point in time, I had asked the fire chief, the previous chief, to check into it with the fire was parked there, and you couldn't, if you came.
It was shortly after the Prior Smith Park when it was put in, and then the swimming pool season was in, so there were people parked on both sides of the street.
Okay.
So that instead of parking in the parking lot at John Sterling and walking on the sidewalk, they would park there so they could obviously be closer. And then it just became, there was a couple of resident complaints that when they were turning into that street, that it was difficult for them to see what was around. They were concerned about children.
Well, I would say it's reasonable to add that in there.
Make that part of the no parking zone on the
Yes.
side, or I don't know.
The east side of the street, but not the pool side, but the east side.
I think, the general consensus when the park was built or was there was that individuals would park on in this parking lot which pools at. However, it's quite a long jaunt over there, so they were parking on the street. But they were parking on both sides of the street.
And we've already got parking within 50 feet of an intersection, and it constantly did that at the pool for the longest time. But that happens.
Is there a street for?
So we said the east side of Charles College.
Yeah, east side is closed.
Is that agreement for both directions, or just one sheet?
James Lavelle? All right, Chief, do you want to explain your stuff, or?
But after going through the ordinance, I came up with a couple of recommendations myself, as well as I got some input from code enforcement and some of the supervisors at the police department. So one of the first things I was asked to look at is whether or not we needed to include a definition of what a junk motor vehicle was within Chapter 71. So what I did locate is that if you go down to Chapter 90, which deals with abandoned junk vehicles, Section 90.01 has a definition that is basically a cut and paste out of the Transportation Code, Section 683.071. So the definition already appears within our ordinances at one point. So if we were to include the ordinance in Chapter 71, I would recommend that we just use the exact same definition in both chapters. That way we stay consistent. In looking at Section 71.01 on unlawful parking, Sections A and B, this is the specific topic that we're talking about is how long should a vehicle be allowed to be stored or parked on the street without moving. Current ordinance right now is 24 hours, and if it's not moved, it's subject to impoundment. A couple of things that were brought up were, what do we do in the event a family's going out the coast on a weekend, or they're gonna go camping, or something like that. So after some consideration, what my recommendation would be was to take the 24-hour parking period and extend it out to at least 72 hours. That covers, you know, at least Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in the event somebody does take a weekend trip. Beyond that, what I'm suggesting or recommending is that we kind of mirror another chapter that talks about storage and parking of privately owned vehicles on city property. Right now, it would be up to the city manager, myself, the fire chief, public works, to allow parking within our parking lot as long as it doesn't create a problem. That has happened here, it has happened at the police department, I'm not sure, I can't speak on behalf of fire or public works. So what I thought we might consider is a recommendation that would allow either myself and the city manager, or perhaps each department head to grant parking on the street for up to 7 days. Let's just say in the event that a resident and his wife want to go on cruise. They're not going to be home for 7 days, as long as they sent a email to, say, the city secretary or a designated point of contact, whether that be her or I, the dispatch center, as long as they requested that, that we could go ahead and approve a one-time extension on the amount of time that vehicle's allowed to park there. In my recommendations, I put 7 days. It would be up to council to decide. It could be 10 days, 5 days, 30 days, whatever the council itself is comfortable with. The last item that I want to recommend, and this is actually on behalf of code enforcement, and this is going to affect section 71.05, and this covers the parking of trailers and other vehicles. Right now, the ordinance as a whole prevents long-term storage of boats, trailers, vehicles within the front yard or on the side yard, but does not address the backyard. And we have had a couple of instances, the most notable one